Before we begin, take a slow, deep breath. Let your shoulders soften. Let the day fall away like dust in the evening light. Settle into a comfortable position and take a slow, gentle breath in. Then exhale like a soft sigh. Imagine a quiet winter night around you. Snow resting on rooftops. Lantern light glowing warmly in windows. Everything peaceful. Everything still. Begin at the forehead. Feel a whisper of winter air passing over it. Cool, clean, refreshing. Let any tension melt away. Like frost under morning sun. Soften the eyes and jaw. No need to hold anything. Just let the face rest. Breathe again, slow and easy. As you breathe out, feel your neck and shoulders relax. Imagine a soft wool scarf around them, warm and comforting. Your chest and stomach rise and fall in a steady winter rhythm, like quiet snow falling on fields. Nothing rushed, nothing urgent. Move the attention down the arms. Warmth travels from the shoulders to the elbows, all the way to the hands. Your fingers rest like mittens drying by the fire. Another deep breath and relax the back, each small muscle unwinding, releasing, becoming loose. Let your legs feel heavy and cozy, like sinking into a soft winter blanket. Thighs, knees, calves, feet, all warm, all calm. Outside, the world is quiet. Snow is falling gently in the dark blue night, but inside you are safe and warm and still. Breathe once more. Slow, peaceful. You are ready to rest, ready to wander into story time, and then into deep winter dreams. If you love stories about quiet places, simple routines, and the comfort of slow living, don't forget to follow Moonlit Whispers for more calm nights like this one. Here, the world slows to a whisper, and the only thing that matters is the soft glow of the moment you're in. Now, imagine a little English village as autumn begins to settle in. Golden leaves drift down from beech trees, and the air smells faintly of apples, wood smoke, and honey. Down the main lane, between the flower shop and the baker's window, stands a small, amber-lit store called the Honeycomb Pantry, and inside it, behind rows of glass jars and polished wooden shelves, works Mrs. Thistle, the kind-hearted shopkeeper who has spent the better part of her life surrounded by the hum of quiet commerce, the scent of beeswax, and the comfort of her village folk. Let's step inside. The bell above the shop door gave a cheerful little jingle as Mrs. Thistle turned the key that morning. Outside, the mist still clung to the windows, and the cobblestones glistened faintly from a light rain during the night. Inside, all was still, save for the faint ticking of the old brass clock and the gentle creak of the floorboards beneath her boots, she set down her basket on the counter, unwrapped a loaf of freshly baked bread from the baker across the street, and smiled at the warm scent that filled the small, honey-colored room. The Honeycomb Pantry had been part of the village for as long as anyone could remember. Its shelves were lined with local handmade goods, jars of jam and golden honey, blocks of lavender soap, candles from Willowmere Cottage, and stitched linen sachets filled with dried herbs. Every shelf told a story of the people who made the things, and of the love stitched and poured and wrapped into every small creation. Mrs. Thistle moved slowly around the shop, her soft wool cardigan brushing against the shelves as she straightened labels, refilled the display of beeswax tapers, and laid out a few brown paper-wrapped parcels ready for pickup. Outside, the sun began to rise through the mist, casting a faint golden shimmer across the jars of honey on the window ledge. Each one glowed like captured sunlight. She paused to admire them. Sometimes, when the light hit just right, it looked as though the jars themselves were humming. From behind the counter, she retrieved a clean linen cloth and began polishing a small copper kettle. It had belonged to her mother, once used to pour tea for travelers who stopped by when the Honeycomb Pantry was still half a tea room, half a grocer's shop. The kettle gleamed softly under her careful hand. Everything in her shop gleamed softly, not because it was new, but because it was loved. A soft rapping came from the door. She looked up to find Mr. Alder, the postman, standing outside, his coat damp with dew and his cap slightly askew. She waved him in, and the doorbell chimed again as he entered. "Mornin', Mrs. Thistle," he said, his cheeks pink from the cold. "Got your parcel from Willowmere. Looks like another box of candles." She smiled. "Ah, Eliza's batch, I expect." Just in time, the shelves were nearly empty. Mrs. Thistle took the small brown box from his arms, its paper tied with twine, and sealed with a wax stamp shaped like a sprig of lavender. The scent escaped the moment she untied it, soft and floral and faintly sweet. She placed the new candles on the front table, arranging them beside the honey jars and herbal teas. "Thank you, Mr. Alder," she said warmly. "Would you like a cup of tea before you go?" He chuckled, glancing at his watch. "Ah, I'd best not linger, though I'll take a scone if there's one left from yesterday." Mrs. Thistle grinned, retrieving a tin from behind the counter. "Always for you." He bit into it, crumbs falling onto his scarf. "Best part of my morning, this shop," he said softly. "Always smells like comfort." After he left, Mrs. Thistle brewed herself a small pot of chamomile tea, pouring it into a delicate china cup. She took it to her favorite corner table, a little round one near the window, where she could watch the village come alive. The baker's boy dashed past with trays of warm loaves. The florist arranged dahlias and asters in tall buckets, and a few school children giggled as they splashed through puddles. It was the sort of morning that made her heart feel full, simple but perfectly enough. She sipped slowly, letting the honey melt into the tea. Her eyes drifted to the shelves again, each filled with things made by kind hands: candles, soaps, jams, knitted mittens, and little bundles of dried herbs tied with twine. She thought of all the people behind those crafts, each working quietly in their cottages, each creating something that found its way to the Honeycomb Pantry. That was the joy of her shop. It wasn't about selling things. It was about connecting them. She often said her shop wasn't a marketplace, but a meeting place, the heart of the village, where stories came wrapped in brown paper and tied with string. Outside, the sun broke through the clouds, turning the shop's windows into panes of soft amber light. Mrs. Thistle smiled, set down her cup, and pulled on her shawl. There was still much to do. A crate of apple preserves to price, and new honey jars to label for the coming harvest festival. But she didn't rush. She never did. Everything in her world moved at the pace of kindness, unhurried, warm, and steady as the hum of bees beyond the window. As she began tying fresh labels onto the jars, she caught sight of a note tucked beneath the last box of honey. It was from the local beekeeper, handwritten in looping script. New batch, light floral notes this time. The bees loved the late lavender bloom, sending warmth. Thomas, she smiled to herself. Thomas had been the village beekeeper for decades. Quiet, gentle, the kind of man who could coax music from the hum of hives. She made a note to send him a loaf of bread and a jar of Eliza's candle wax as thanks. And so the morning drifted on, the bell chiming softly each time someone entered, the shelves growing lighter, the air scented with honey and the warmth of old wood, the honeycomb pantry breathed with life, the kind of life that was built on care, patience, and the small golden joys of an ordinary day. The morning settled softly over the village, like a pale wash of gold across the cobblestones. Mrs. Thistle stood behind the counter, letting the quiet fill the shop while she polished a jar of honey until it glimmered. Outside, the baker's boy ran past, tray balanced carefully in his arms, his cheeks pink with exertion and the morning chill. She could hear the distant murmur of the schoolchildren's laughter as they splashed through the puddles left by last night's rain. Occasionally, a soft jingle would reach her ears, as a small coin clinked into a tin or a door opened for the first customer of the day. The first visitors were Mr. Finch and his granddaughter, young Clara, who liked to press her small hands against the glass jars. "Good morning, Mrs. Thistle," Mr. Finch said, his voice warm, slightly rasping with age. "I thought I'd stop by for a jar of your late lavender honey. Makes the evenings so comforting." Mrs. Thistle nodded, smiling. "Just the thing for a quiet evening, Mr. Finch. Would you like me to wrap it for you?" Clara reached for a small sachet of herbs on the lower shelf, her tiny fingers brushing the tied bundles gently. "Can we get some of these too, grandfather? Please." The girl's innocence and delight were contagious. Mrs. Thistle selected a few sprigs of chamomile and tied them together with twine. "For evenings by the fire," she said softly, handing them to Clara. The girl's smile was like a small sun, spreading warmth across the little shop. Once they left, the bell jingled again, and in came the florist, Mrs. Patel, carrying buckets of freshly cut asters and dahlias. The flowers smelled faintly of rain, and the petals glistened with droplets that had yet to evaporate. "Good morning, Mrs. Thistle," she said. "I've brought a few arrangements for those who ordered flowers for the Harvest Festival, and I brought some extras for you, of course." She handed over a small bundle of soft pink dahlias. Mrs. Thistle thanked her, arranging the flowers in a small vase near the counter. Their gentle fragrance mixed with the scent of honey and freshly baked bread, creating a quiet, comforting perfume that wrapped the shop in warmth. The morning drifted by slowly, each visitor bringing small stories and quiet joy. The baker returned with more loaves, their crusts golden and warm, and Mrs. Thistle offered him a slice of cheese with his coffee, just as he liked it. By midday, the shop was alive with gentle activity. The schoolchildren returned, some to watch her stir a small pot of honey into tea, others to press their noses against the windows, fascinated by the orderly rows of jars and bundles. Mrs. Thistle paused to look around, letting her hands rest on the counter. There was a rhythm here, soft and steady, like the heartbeat of the village itself. Each person who came and went added a quiet note to the melody. Laughter, greetings, soft murmurs. She set down a small plate of leftover scones for the children and watched as they chose carefully, savoring each crumb. Even in the simplicity of these moments, she felt the depth of connection. The way small kindnesses, small attentions, made the world feel full. Later in the afternoon, a young couple arrived. They were newcomers to the village, unfamiliar with the routine and rhythm of the streets. Their eyes shone with curiosity as they stepped into the shop, glancing from jars of honey to bundles of herbs. "Hello," Mrs. Thistle said gently. "Welcome to the Honeycomb Pantry. Can I help you find something?" The woman smiled, glancing at the jars. "We've heard of your honey," she said. "It's supposed to be the best in the village." Mrs. Thistle chuckled softly. "It comes from the bees and a lot of patient hands," she said. "Would you like to try the late bloom batch? It has a mild sweetness and a gentle floral note." They nodded, and she carefully poured a small sample into a tiny dish. They tasted it slowly, exchanging a quiet glance of appreciation. It was in that stillness, that gentle pause, that the true value of her shop became apparent. It was not just honey or herbs or candles. It was the space to breathe, to notice small pleasures, to let time slow. As the sun lowered in the sky, turning the windows to a soft amber glow, Mrs. Thistle took a moment to sit in her favorite corner, cup of chamomile tea in hand. The shop smelled of honey, herbs, and faintly of wood polish, familiar, comforting, and steady. She looked out the window at the village streets. Some were quiet now, just a few figures walking home. The baker's boy had gone, the florist had returned her empty buckets, and the children were heading indoors. The day was winding down, and yet there was a lingering warmth in the light, a soft comfort that stayed even as the world outside slowed. Her attention shifted to the small parcels stacked neatly on the counter, each labeled and tied with care. These were for neighbors and friends who could not come in themselves. Jars of honey, bundles of herbs, candles from Eliza's latest batch. They were small gestures, but each one carried thoughtfulness and quiet kindness, the very essence of the shop itself. Just then, the bell jingled softly once more. A visitor she did not recognize stepped in, a quiet man with a basket covered in a scarf. He seemed uncertain, shuffling his feet slightly, and looked around with gentle curiosity. "Good afternoon," Mrs. Thistle said, setting down her cup. "Can I help you?" He nodded, offering a polite smile. I'm looking for a gift. Something simple, made with care. I was told this is the place to find it." Mrs. Thistle's eyes softened. She moved slowly along the shelves, selecting a jar of late bloom honey, a small bundle of chamomile and lavender tied neatly with twine, and a simple beeswax candle. Each item was chosen with care, placed in his basket gently. "These are all made with care," she said. "I hope they bring a little warmth." He nodded, smiling faintly, and reached into his coat to hand her a folded note. Unfolding it, she read the words, "Thank you for keeping a place where care is always visible." Mrs. Thistle folded the note gently, tucking it into the corner of the basket. "It's my pleasure," she said. As the visitor left, the shop felt lighter, quieter, and still filled with gentle warmth. She looked around, noticing how the sunlight had shifted through the windows, casting long, soft shadows over jars of honey and bundles of herbs. Everything seemed to glow, calm and steady, as though the day itself had learned to slow here. The afternoon drifted into evening. Mrs. Thistle lit a candle on the front table, its soft light reflecting in the jars of honey, turning them into pools of amber. She poured herself a cup of tea, inhaling the sweet, gentle aroma, and settled into her chair by the window. Outside, the village grew quiet. The children had returned home. The baker's boy had delivered the last loaves, and only a few figures walked along the streets. The wind carried a faint smell of rain and wood smoke. Mrs. Thistle's hands rested on her lap as she sipped her tea. Each sound, each scent, each warm glow in the shop seemed to lull her into calm. She thought of the villagers she had met today, of the small kindnesses and quiet moments that made life full. The Honeycomb Pantry was not just a shop. It was a space of comfort, of gentle connections, and of time that moved slowly enough to notice. Each jar, each bundle, each candle held not just its substance, but the care of those who had made it and the quiet attention of those who received it. And as the last light of the sun faded and the village streets softened into quiet, Mrs. Thistle smiled to herself. Tomorrow would bring more gentle footsteps, more soft voices, and more moments like this, simple, unhurried, and full of the warmth that comes from living slowly and kindly. She sat for a while longer, letting the candlelight pool around her, listening to the distant hum of the evening. Her cup of tea was warm, her shawl soft, and the world outside felt gentle and calm. Tonight, the shop would rest, ready to greet another day. And in the quiet of the fading light, Mrs. Thistle let herself drift with the slow rhythm of the village, feeling the peace that comes from a day spent well, in care and in calm. The sun sank low behind the hills, painting the village in muted golds and soft pinks. Outside, the cobblestones glimmered faintly, still holding the memory of morning's rain, and a gentle breeze carried the distant scent of wood smoke from chimneys. Inside the Honeycomb Pantry, the shelves gleamed warmly in the fading light, honey jars catching the amber glow, the gentle fragrance of herbs lingering in the air. Mrs. Thistle moved slowly around the shop, straightening a few jars, brushing her hand over a bundle of chamomile, and polishing a small brass kettle that had belonged to her mother. The act itself was soothing, a rhythm she had followed for decades. Every motion brought a quiet, steady satisfaction, like the deep contentment of a day well lived. The door jingled softly, and in came young Elsie and her brother, carrying small wicker baskets. Their cheeks were rosy from the chill, and their eyes shone with curiosity. "Good evening, Mrs. Thistle," Elsie said, setting her basket on the counter. "We want some honey and herbs for our mother. She said it helps her sleep." Mrs. Thistle smiled gently, selecting a jar of honey thick and golden, and a small bundle of lavender and chamomile tied neatly with twine. She handed them to Elsie, who hugged the bundle close, inhaling its soothing scent. "Thank you," Elsie whispered. "She'll be so happy." It was a small moment, quiet and ordinary, but it held the essence of the shop: connection, care, and the soft joy of giving. By now, the village streets were quieter. A few figures moved slowly, returning home, their footsteps light on the wet stones. The baker had gone, the florist had tidied her buckets, and the children's laughter had faded into distant echoes. Only the gentle hum of life remained, faint but steady. Mrs. Thistle poured herself a small cup of chamomile tea, the steam curling softly toward her face. She carried it to her favorite chair by the window, letting the soft evening light wash over her. The shop smelled of honey, herbs, and wood polish, familiar and comforting. She took a sip, letting the warmth spread slowly through her hands and body. Outside, the sky deepened to a soft indigo, and the first stars began to appear, faint points of light twinkling gently above the rooftops. As she sat, she thought about the people who had come and gone today. Mr. Finch with his granddaughter, the young couple exploring the village, Elsie and her brother, and the quiet stranger who had stopped by with a basket earlier. Each had left a little mark on the day, a small ripple of kindness or gratitude that made her heart feel full. She thought about the bees, busy in the hives just beyond the village. How diligently they worked, yet how quietly, contributing their tiny sweetness to the jars that now lined her shelves. The thought made her smile, the harmony of care and diligence, whether human or bee, created a rhythm that made life gentle and steady. The candle on the front table flickered softly, casting long shadows across the shelves. Its light pooled over the honey jars, making them glow like captured sunlight. Mrs. Thistle reached over and straightened it, her hand brushing against the warm wax. It was a small act, unnoticed by anyone else, but it gave her a sense of completion, a quiet satisfaction that the day's work had been done thoughtfully. She set her tea beside the chair and picked up a small bundle of dried herbs to inspect the twine. She untied it slowly, smelled the chamomile, and tied it again carefully. Each motion was deliberate, measured, and calming. Even in these simple tasks, there was a rhythm that soothed the mind, a reminder that life could move slowly and kindly. Outside, a soft breeze stirred the trees. The sound of leaves brushing together was faint but steady, a whisper of nature that blended with the distant hum of the village. Somewhere, a dog barked, and then silence returned. The village was settling into quiet, and the shop mirrored it perfectly. Mrs. Thistle's gaze wandered to the window. The cobblestones glistened faintly in the dim light, reflecting the last traces of sun. The neighboring houses were warm inside, lights glowing softly through the windows. She imagined the people there, preparing for the evening, just as she had simple routines, small comforts, a cup of tea, a quiet word, the scent of bread or herbs filling the home. She thought about the copper kettle once more, polished and gleaming on the counter. It had poured tea for travelers decades ago, and now it served her in the same way. The continuity of life, of small gestures repeated over time, gave her a sense of grounding. It was a reminder that comfort could be found in familiarity, in care, and in the slow passage of days. The bell above the door jingled again, faint and distant, perhaps carried by a wandering breeze, or perhaps the sound of memory. Mrs. Thistle did not move. She only smiled, knowing that even in its quietest moments, the shop held the echoes of every visitor, every small kindness, every gentle exchange. The evening deepened further. Shadows grew longer, and the candlelight flickered softly, casting gentle warmth across the shelves. Mrs. Thistle sipped the last of her tea, feeling the gentle weight of calm settle over her. There was no rush, no urgency, only the quiet, steady rhythm of a day completed with care. She tidied the counter one last time, arranging jars and bundles so that tomorrow would greet her with the same order and calm. She checked the small stack of parcels, ensuring each was ready to be collected. Everything was in its place, neat and cared for. Finally, she wrapped herself in her shawl, the wool warm and soft around her shoulders. She walked to the front door, giving one last glance to the shop. The jars of honey glowed in the candlelight. The herbs smelled faintly sweet, and the shelves stood neat and waiting. The Honeycomb Pantry was ready for tomorrow, ready to welcome more footsteps, more quiet conversations, more gentle exchanges. She closed the door softly behind her, the bell giving a gentle jingle, and stepped onto the cool cobblestones. The evening air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of wood smoke and rain-soaked earth. She walked slowly along the street, her footsteps soft, listening to the village settle into calm. The world outside was quiet, serene, and peaceful, just as it had been all day. And in the small warmth of the shop, the glow of candles, and the scent of honey and herbs lingered, a reminder that simple things done with care could create a profound comfort. Mrs. Thistle paused for a moment under the soft light of a street lamp, looking back at the Honeycomb Pantry. The shop stood small and steady, a quiet anchor in the village, holding the day's work, the echoes of voices, and the gentle warmth of care. She took a slow, deep breath, feeling the calm settle into her chest. Everything was as it should be, steady, warm, and unhurried. The day had ended not with grand events, but with countless small, meaningful moments, each one a quiet note in the gentle melody of life. And so, as the stars appeared in the sky, soft and distant, Mrs. Thistle walked home slowly, shawl wrapped around her shoulders, heart full, and mind at ease. The Honeycomb Pantry rested quietly behind her, ready to greet another day, another story, another opportunity to offer care and comfort in the soft rhythm of village life. The night settled, calm and unbroken, carrying the faint scent of honey, herbs, and the gentle warmth of a day lived slowly and kindly. And with that, the village and its little pantry slept peacefully, ready to awaken with the morning light and the quiet joy of simple, ordinary things. And so, the Honeycomb Pantry rests for the night, its jars of honey glowing softly, its shelves filled with the quiet warmth of a day well spent. May your evening be just as calm, your thoughts gentle, and your dreams sweet, if you enjoyed this little journey through the village and Mrs. Thistle's cozy shop. Don't forget to subscribe to Moonlit Whispers for more soothing stories to help you unwind and drift into a peaceful sleep. Good night, and may tomorrow greet you softly, like the first light through a honey-colored window.